The Bible isn't just an ancient book, it's the most powerful story ever told. It shaped history, inspired revolutions, and still influences billions today. But have you ever wondered how a collection of scattered texts became the most influential book in human history? Or why it still sparks debate, devotion, and discovery after thousands of years? Let's dive into the incredible journey of how the Bible was formed and why it remains a cultural and spiritual force unlike anything else. The story of the Bible's historical timeline is one of profound depth, spanning centuries of human history, faith, and cultural transformation. It begins in the ancient world of Israel, where oral traditions and early writings laid the foundation for what would become the Old Testament. Over time, as the Jewish people navigated the trials of conquest, exile, and restoration, their sacred texts took shape, preserving their history and covenant with God. These scriptures would not only define Jewish identity, but also serve as the foundation for a new religious movement that emerged with the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. From the rise of the early church to the canonization of the Bible as we know it today, this timeline reflects the enduring power of faith, the perseverance of religious communities, and the intricate process of compiling the most influential book in history. At its core, the Bible is a collection of sacred writings divided into two main sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament, which aligns closely with the Hebrew Scriptures, recounts the story of the Israelites, their covenant with God, and the laws, prophecies, and poetry that shaped their faith. It was composed over many centuries, beginning with oral traditions that were eventually written down. The earliest portions, such as the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were likely transmitted orally before being recorded in written form. The process of compiling these texts was influenced by historical events, including the Exodus, the establishment of the monarchy under King David and King Solomon, and the eventual destruction of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. One of the most pivotal moments in the formation of the Old Testament was the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BCE. When the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem and destroyed Solomon's temple, many Israelites were taken captive and lived in exile for decades. During this period, the Jewish people faced an existential crisis that led them to preserve and refine their sacred writings. The Torah, or the first 5 books of the Bible, was likely solidified during this time, and prophetic writings addressing themes of judgment, redemption, and hope gained prominence. When the Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great, allowed the Jewish people to return to their land, efforts to restore their religious and national identity led to further organization and canonization of their scriptures. The Second Temple period, beginning in the 5th century BCE, saw continued development of Jewish religious texts, including the Psalms, Proverbs, and historical books recounting the return from exile. By the time of Jesus' birth, Jewish scriptures were widely recognized, though debates over the inclusion of certain texts persisted. The Jewish world into which Jesus was born was shaped by Roman occupation and a diversity of religious groups, including Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes, each with different interpretations of the Hebrew Scriptures. Jesus' ministry, recorded in the New Testament, marked the beginning of a transformative period that would redefine the relationship between the Jewish faith and the emerging Christian movement. Jesus' teachings, death, and reported resurrection became the foundation of Christianity, with his followers proclaiming him as the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies. The first Christians, many of whom were Jewish, initially continued worshiping in synagogues and following Jewish traditions. However, as the message of Jesus spread beyond Jewish communities, especially through the missionary work of Paul, Christianity began to take on a distinct identity. The New Testament was formed during this period not as a single cohesive book, but as a collection of writings that documented the life of Jesus, the teachings of his apostles, and the struggles and growth of the early church. The 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, offered different perspectives on Jesus' life and ministry, while Paul's letters to various Christian communities addressed theological questions and practical concerns. The Roman Empire played a crucial role in the expansion of Christianity, both as a force of persecution and later as an instrument of institutionalization. In the early centuries, Christians faced hostility from Roman authorities, who viewed their refusal to worship the emperor as a threat. This led to periods of intense persecution, but also to the strengthening of Christian identity and theology. By the 4th century, under Emperor Constantine, Christianity transitioned from a persecuted sect to an officially recognized religion. The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE was a turning point in defining Christian doctrine, and in the following centuries, efforts to determine the official canon of Scripture gained momentum. The process of canonization was not immediate but developed over time. Early Christians relied on a variety of texts, but by the late 4th century, the 27 books of the New Testament were widely recognized as authoritative. The decisions about which books to include were based on factors such as apostolic authorship, widespread acceptance, and consistency with Christian teaching. The finalization of the biblical canon ensured that both the Old and New Testaments would be preserved as the foundational texts of Christianity. Understanding the historical timeline of the Bible allows us to appreciate its depth and complexity. It is not merely a religious text, but a record of human history, culture, and faith that has shaped civilizations for millennia. By tracing its journey from ancient Israel to the early church, we gain insight into how the Bible was formed, how it has been interpreted over time, and why it continues to be a source of inspiration and debate today. I'll leave you to discuss in the comments. If the Bible were first written today, do you think it would be a book, a YouTube series, or just a chaotic Twitter thread? Let me know below. You can support us by subscribing if you haven't already. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and I'll catch you soon in another video.